Hello my beautiful friends, welcome back to Turkish Spotlight Secrets. Before we dive in, if you haven't joined our family yet, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support means the world to me. Now take a breath and come with me into a night that shook Rome, and every heart watching, from the edge of fear to the brink of hope. Dawn hadn't even touched the ancient stones of the city when the street outside San Camillo Hospital filled with a hush so heavy it felt like the air itself didn't dare move. Cameras were lowered for once. People clutched each other. The hour felt suspended. Then, at 5:47 a.m., a man stepped toward the lights. His hands were trembling. His eyes were rimmed with sleeplessness, red and raw. He swallowed, tried to steady himself, and finally let out a sentence that cracked the silence in two. It was Çağatay Ulusoy. He looked like a man holding back a storm, and his voice shook as he admitted the one thing he feared most. If the worst happened to his wife Vigil and their unborn child, he didn't know how he could go on breathing. The crowd allowed the words to settle like the chill of rain. Microphones drew back. Reporters forgot their questions. Only soft sobs could be heard, a chorus of strangers grieving for two people they'd never met, but felt they knew. Vigil Kaya was 28 weeks along. Everything up until that night had seemed charmed. They were in Rome because Çağatay had slowed his filming schedule to be close to her, to keep their days simple and warm while they waited for their baby. They would walk the narrow streets after dinner, laugh over gelato, talk about baby names under the amber lamplight. A fairy tale, fragile and perfect. And then at 2:15 a.m. on May 20th, it shattered. A scream tore through their home. It wasn't fear alone, it was pain, piercing and real. Vigil collapsed, hands pressed to her belly, her face washed pale, breath breaking into shards. Blood spread like a cruel bloom. She slipped in and out of consciousness, her voice thin, calling his name. With shaking fingers, he dialed for help. He gathered her into his arms the way you hold something precious that you cannot let fall, and he kept whispering into her hair, "Please stay, you promised, you told me you'd dance with me in the kitchen with our baby in your arms." He begged, as if words could bind her to this world. The ambulance tore through the sleeping city. Blue light flashed across ancient walls and quiet fountains, and every jolt felt like a test of faith. In the back, his hands were stained with her blood. He kept repeating her name, one word and a prayer. The medics moved with urgency, clipped voices carrying over the siren. At San Camillo, everything happened fast, doors flew open, a stretcher vanished down a corridor, and a swarm of scrubs and masks swallowed her into a room where only skill and time were allowed to go. Emergency C-section. The baby was suffocating inside, every second mattered. He heard himself yell, "No, please, this is too soon, don't take them from me." It wasn't a sentence, not really, more like a plea thrown at the ceiling. A nurse tried to calm him, reminding him they needed space to work. He slid down the wall, hands on his head, and muttered the same line again and again, a fragile mantra holding him together, "If they aren't here, neither am I." He said it under his breath until it became the rhythm of his breaths. At 5:47 a.m., as the surgeons went into the operating room and the moment hovered at its highest tension, he stepped back outside to face the sea of worried faces waiting at the entrance. His gray t-shirt held the night's terrible testimony. He looked emptied out but resolute. He drew in a deep breath like a diver about to submerge and said, barely controlling the quiver in his mouth, "My Vigil, she's the center of my universe. The child she carries is our miracle. She's in there fighting. If I lose them tonight, I don't know what life would even mean anymore." Inside, time misbehaved. Seconds twisted, minutes stretched. There was a moment when the monitors told a story no one wanted to hear. Vigil's heart paused. 40 seconds without a beat. 40 long, brutal seconds where hope thinned out and the room turned into a battleground. The team refused to let go. They pushed and called and fought. When someone outside whispered to him what was happening, his knees gave way. He crumpled to the floor like a puppet with its strings cut. Then he forced himself upright again and pressed his palms together as if he could hold everything steady by sheer will. "Let me go in," he begged. "Please." Don't leave her alone. Please don't leave my wife. Beyond those walls, the world began to pulse with messages. Phones lit up like constellations. Fans across countries trended a single line, a digital candle in the dark, #Hazalasindua, pray for Hazal. There were millions of posts in minutes, threads of hope spun by people who had grown up with her performances and found pieces of themselves in hers. Colleagues added their voices. Karim Burson wrote that hearing Kagatay's words felt like his own chest had cracked. Neslihan Atagal spoke about the strength that arrives when a woman stands on the threshold of motherhood. Engane Kurek reminded everyone that Hazal is fierce and luminous, and that the light would break through. 3 hours later, hours that tasted like years, a cry cut through the sterile air. Small, tentative, but real. A baby boy arrived. Alive, but delicate. He was tiny, his lungs not yet prepared for the world, his skin warm as a flicker. The team moved like a single hand to an incubator. The baby's chest fluttered. Machines blinked. The world outside dared to breathe again. Hazal was not out of the woods. Her condition was perilous but holding. A doctor stepped out for a moment, nodding to him that the worst wave hadn't claimed her. He went back to the press then, and this time his voice was quiet with gratitude and fear living side by side. Our son is breathing. Hazal is with us. We're not safe yet. Keep us in your prayers. They are my heart. When they live, I live. After the initial storm passed, he stood beside the incubator, separated by a pane of clear plastic and a swarm of gentle wires. His reflection hovered over the baby's sleeping face. He leaned close and spoke so softly the machines could barely hear him. We'll call you Hope, he promised. Your mother held on for you with every beat she had left. We'll raise you together. You'll hear stories about the night you arrived and how the whole world waited with us. And then, as if naming the future could secure it, he added, always together. Days began to take on a rhythm. Each morning, before the corridors got busy, he was allowed into the intensive care unit. The room hummed with quiet beeps and the whisper of machines breathing for the smallest fighters. He pulled up a chair, took Hazal's hand between both of his, and read to her, sometimes a poem she loved, sometimes a paragraph from a book they shared, sometimes the simplest lines he wrote the night before when he couldn't sleep. He told her ridiculous stories just to make her lips twitch. About a cat that refused to move from his lap, about how the coffee machine hissed at him like a jealous actor, about the nurse who said their boy had stubborn eyes. 15 minutes passed like 5 and like 50 at once. Then he'd go see their baby and lay his palm against the incubator as if to remind the little fighter that a father was standing guard. At night, when visiting hours ended and the hospital exhaled, he sat on the steps just beyond the sliding doors. The city would rustle to life around him, the far-off buzz of a scooter, a vendor stacking crates, a pair of strangers arguing and then laughing, but he remained in the eye of the storm, counting breaths, counting hopes. He'd stare at the doors and whisper to the future he was building one word at a time. One day, we'll sit here together, your mother, you, and me, and the street will be nothing but ordinary noise. Professor Alessandra Ferri, the chief physician at San Camillo, appeared before the cameras one afternoon with a measured smile. Her words were careful but warm, the way sunlight filters through a window. Mr. Ulusoy's presence has a measurable impact, she said. His steadiness calms the room. We see improvement in their baby with each sunrise, and most of the immediate dangers for Hazal have either passed or been greatly reduced. In other words, light was returning. Through it all, the internet became a cathedral of candles. Artists, athletes, childhood friends, and fans who knew them only through screens posted prayers, drawings, old scenes from beloved series, little videos of people saying their names like a charm. It felt as if everyone had become a relative in that moment, protective and proud. Some said they had no faith but found themselves praying anyway. Others wrote that love is a kind of medicine, and that it was working. As hours turned into days, the little boy began to prove he was, indeed, named well. He gripped a finger. He fought for each breath. A nurse joked that he already had his father's eyebrows, and he smiled for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. When Hazal's eyes finally fluttered open for more than a moment, she searched the room until she found him. He had rehearsed 1,000 ways to tell her everything, but when that gaze landed on his face, all he could say was, "We're here. You, me, and Hope. We're here." He would later tell a friend that he hadn't been brave, just stubborn. That when the night tried to swallow them, he refused to close his mouth and accept it. He kept saying the same impossible vow because it was the only thing that made sense in a world that had stopped making sense. If they weren't in this world, he couldn't be either. People started quoting him, not because he was famous, but because the sentence sounded like love distilled down to its bone. The city that had watched in silence began to applaud every update. A shopkeeper across from the hospital taped a sign to his window, "For Hazal and her boys." A woman left a bouquet of tiny white flowers on the steps. Some passerby tucked a sweet note between the railings, "Little one, we are all waiting for your first laugh." Even the nurses started to greet him like a neighbor. He learned their names and thanked them every time, each gratitude uneven with emotion. And because life is complicated even in its brightest chapters, there were moments of setback. A fever spike. A stubborn lab result. Another night of numbers that refused to climb. Each time, he squared his shoulders and started the routine all over again: story, poem, prayer, press his hand to the incubator, breathe with the little chest, repeat her name like a verse. Their love story, already beloved by millions for how it bloomed on screen and off, had moved to a quieter stage, hospital corridors and waiting rooms, and somehow felt more real than it ever had before. When Professor Ferry returned with yet another update, clearer, steadier, fuller of promise, the air around San Camilo seemed to expand. The baby's lungs were maturing. Hazal's color was better. The danger that had crouched in the corner of the room was stepping back. No one declared victory, they were too respectful of fate for that. But people began to smile without apologizing for it. This is, at its core, a tale about all the things we hope love can do when it's put to the test. Steady a shaking hand, hold a door open between darkness and light, keep vigil until the dawn stumbles in. It's about a man who stripped himself down to the simplest truth he had and said it out loud so the world could carry it with him. And it's about a woman whose strength turned into a lighthouse for anyone who has ever found themselves in the dark. We'll all remember the way he looked that night, haunted but unbroken, and the way his voice didn't quite hold when he told us what he would become without her. The sentence has already started to drift beyond this story into others, whispered by people who need something to cling to. If they aren't here, neither am I. In one breath, he redefined what devotion sounds like. This is where we leave them tonight, in a hospital that has begun to feel like a second home, in a city that adopted their pain and their hope, surrounded by strangers who suddenly feel like family. Their son is small but stubborn, and Hazal is a force the world already knew, now revealed in a brand new light. And him, he's the quiet anchor, the steady beat that kept time until both of their hearts were strong enough to beat on their own. We've reached the end of our video. If you want to keep following this journey with me here at Turkish Spotlight Secrets, please like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who believes in the power of love to pull us back from the edge. I adore you all. Until the next one, take care, and keep your candles lit for Hazal, for hope, and for the man who refused to let the night win.